I wanted to say some stuff too, like in terms of one of the things that Keith mentions is Jessica. And I wanted to talk about Jessica and say that Rebecca Ferguson, yeah, I love that actress. She's a great actress. But
she is.
I agree with Keith in that my view of Jessica, and I know that this part of it has been also tainted by David Lynch's movie because I can't remember the name of the actress, but she is
Francesca Annis. You see,
she's so
I never
gorgeous.
forgot.
So real quick on Francesca Annis.
Beautiful woman.
So
yes.
I don't know if you guys are, because I also write plays, so I kind of read plays and I've watched plays and stuff like that.
Okay.
Shakespeare. There was a movie they made of Macbeth, and that actress from Dune is in that. And the reason why I love that David Lynch is because in the Shakespeare one, she plays Macbeth's crazy wife. When I saw her in Dune, I was like, oh my God, they have her as Jessica, which like obviously it kind of tainted what I view as Jessica. But then in the book, it's the same thing in the book where she's supposed to be like very like attractive. And the way that with Rebecca Ferguson, she's a great actress, and it's not that she's not attractive, but the way they make her, like they make her more like kind of like she's more of a utilitarian wife. Like she's not like that's another thing I want to add. The chemistry between her and the Duke in the book and also in the Lynch version, they're supposed to be kind of like they're in love. But they make it seem like it's more of a business deal in this movie. Like they're together, and I never got the sense that okay, yes, they love their son, but did they really love their son because he's part of their strong relationship together as a couple, or did they just kind of like, this is our seed and because we're royalty, he must be protected at all. Like I didn't sense this chemistry of love between them, which I think was lacking because I don't think Ferguson was a bad actress. I just think that the way that they made the script for her, or however she was told to interpret it, I think was in the wrong direction. Like I don't think Rebecca. It was more like Jessica was more just like a
scared mouse.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, and also like very like loveless. Like there's no passion in her. Like, you know.
So she's his concubine, right?
Yes.
So that's almost like a business relationship.
So let me bring that. Can I?
Yeah, go ahead, Keith. Go ahead.
All right. So with the royal houses in the Dune universe, whether you're a duke or a baron, if you desire, you can have a concubine if you don't want a wife, or if there's an immediacy for you to have an heir, you can have a concubine. She'll be the lady of the house. And if you never get a wife, she'll always stay the lady of the house. Any child that she produces is your heir. Now, if you get married and have a wife, the child you have with your concubine is an heir, but the child you have with your wife, is ahead of that child.
Right.
So,
that makes sense.
No. So I was going to add to that, and part of it too is because, and the David Lynch movie actually talks about that. Like the Duke says, like there's a quote he says during the movie, like in his thoughts about he regrets not marrying her. And the reason why, and this will also hopefully be in probably the third installment of the Dune movie, is that he can't marry her because she's technically not royalty. That's the reason why, and he has to have, just like with the complications with royalty, if he married her, it not denigrates, but it diminishes his standing because she's not royalty
from a great house.
Oh, so they stepped down from England and then moved to America?
Well, I mean, they're actually they're
I'm being funny, dude. I'm being
they're
funny.
actually from Earth. I mean,
that was a hit. That was a jibe at the royal family, bro.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
But no, but I mean that's basically because he could have. I mean, nothing could have stopped him, but in order to maintain like the outside standing with the other houses, he couldn't make her a queen. She had to maintain a.
Just in case one of the other houses said, "We have a daughter we want you to marry."
Yes,
he married the daughter. It brings both houses together.
Yeah,
and makes the empire makes his empire even stronger.
Yeah, just like Game of Thrones. The way they do it in Game of Thrones, where they pair together like it's royalty. You can have a concubine, and he could have actually just still had.
And he could have actually.
Yes, he could have had one as like a queen who's a figurehead, and then he could have had his actual concubine who's he's actually, coupling with behind the scenes.
Okay.
So now, and to elaborate more on the story so far. When Reverend Mother Helen Gaius Mohim came, she's like one of the top Reverend Mothers of the Bene Gesserit, to test Paul with the Gam Jabbar. So basically, and she said to her, you were ordered to have to have a daughter. So the Bene Gesserit are so powerful, they can control their bodies. I mean, they're witches, they have complete mastery of their bodies. And so in that universe, the women decide the sex of the child and not the man. So because Lady Jessica is so madly in love with Duke Leto Atreides, she gave him a son instead of a daughter. Mm-hmm. But when you watch this movie, you don't feel like they're madly in love.
Yes, just I was saying.
Now, exactly. Now they have Oscar Isaac as Duke Leto. They have him say, I should have married you.
Right.
So he changed it. But like what Joselito said in the movie and in the book, Duke Leto was thinking that. He never told her that. Per se.
So in the book, were they madly in love?
Yes.
And what was the evidence
Duke Leto
of that?
Duke Leto was guarded, but he loved her deeply.
What was the evidence of it?
The fact that Paul was she manipulated Paul to be a boy. That was a big deal.
But the information was still relating to this movie, because I knew that from her saying that, like you supposed to and so I knew that she wanted to give him a son, and the woman over
don't see
her.
The passion. You don't really, even when you see them in bed.
Okay, the examples you guys gave, I'm saying they said that in I
agree with you. They said it, but the way it came across in the movie, it felt a little rushed. Like Oscar Isaac, I think, could have been a great Duke Leto, but he didn't have enough time.
Do you think this is a crazy question? But Oscar, that actor was always paired up with Jessica Chastain. I was wondering, what if they just? I mean, maybe her name would have been too big for that movie, but what if they just had her as Lady Jessica? I mean the chemistry between the two of them is so like strong.
I mean, I agree. Look, Rebecca Ferguson is great, and before the movie ended, she was starting to blossom. I just didn't like how they waited to do that on the desert.
I think Rebecca Ferguson is a great actress, but I think with her, I think the only thing about Rebecca Ferguson is she comes off as too intense, which I think for Jessica doesn't work, because Jessica, from what I get from that character from the book,
she's not intense.
She's
subtle.
I mean, she's like pragmatic, and she's also like she's badass, and Ferguson is bad,
subtle.
but she's also there's the thing with Dune is like there's the two, there's men and women, right? Mm-hmm. And men are a certain way and women are a certain way. That's the one thing about this, and I'm curious if because of the climate now with gender and how things are becoming more like genderless, Dune is one of the themes of Dune is the idea that men are a certain way and women are a certain way. And one of the things with Jessica, being a woman, is that she's a badass, but she also doesn't sacrifice her femininity, meaning she still has like she can be nurturing as a mother, she can be nurturing and loving as a lover, but she can also be a warrior when she's needed to be a warrior. That's the cool thing. But Ferguson, I think as an actress, she's a great actress, but I think she's too one-sided. Like I haven't seen her in a movie where she doesn't come off as she comes off as cold to me. Her characters always come off as cold. Even in the Mission Impossible movies, she doesn't have that
What would be an example of what you guys are saying?
There wasn't enough scenes between Duke Leto and Lady Jessica where you see them as a couple. It was all tense and stressful. So it's like
it's almost
you didn't even know they were Paul's parents.
It's almost as if it's almost as if the characters in this movie kind of knew what was going to happen in the future. So it's like they were already acting like tense, as if they, not that they knew what was going to happen, but it's like there was never a moment of, like in the David Lynch version, right?
Yeah.
I don't want to say like as if the David Lynch is like the ultimate Bible, but in the David Lynch version,
it is for me.
In the David Lynch version, the characters do what they're doing, and they also, there's there's moments when they're also like enjoying and also relaxed, meaning like regular people, like.
Okay.
But in this version, it always seems like it's great that they set up like it's tense from the very beginning, but it's almost as if the characters like kind of like they couldn't just be regular people who rely. You know what I'm saying? Like there was never.
Yeah.
It was always tense. It was always tense.
I agree. Jason?
I think that was the choice of the director, just because like you said, you never got a chance to see them really normal, except for like the sit down thing for breakfast. But if you're starting a movie with basically a shift in placement and stuff, like, you know, like you taking these drug kingpins, you know, high rise and over their operations, I think that it starts on that. So yes, there's tension just from where it started.
I'm gonna give you an example, Jason, from one of this director's movies, one of his other movies, Sicario, right? Mm-hmm. Sicario is a perfect example of what I mean in terms of like where you jump back and forth between like how the characters act, which adds to the surprise when something surprising happens. So Sicario, if obviously I think you guys have seen that movie, is so tense. The whole movie is like all tense. But there's a moment in that movie, if you guys remember, when is it Emily Blunt? Emily Blunt meets that guy in the bar, the guy who plays Punisher. What's his name? That actor who plays Punisher. He was also in Ferrari versus Ford. He played Lee Iacocca, the guy, buff guy, and also Walking Dead. When she meets him at the bar,
it's John
Earthenthal.
Bernthal. Yeah. Thank
you. If you remember when she takes him to her apartment and she makes out with him, and then when like the surprise when she finds out that he's really like, you know, a bad guy.
Right.
That was a surprise because you saw. I'm not saying that they, but there you can do that. Like that movie is so tense, but there was still a moment where you can have where the characters are not acting as if like they're always tense all. Meaning like there's a suspension of disbelief where like as normal people, like it's just that like when I saw this movie, I always felt like these characters like it's as if they told them like, you know, oh you guys something bad is gonna happen. So they have to always act like, you know what? If I don't know if that makes sense, but
no,
it's like they knew way ahead of time, so it dictated how they acted, and they always like that's why like Jessica. There was never moments when Jessica and Duke Leto were like intimate as a couple because they always like were acting like as like they have to be prepared on the defensive. So when he's assassinated, that like I mean it just felt like because it was always tense. Then it's kind of like you knew that was going to happen. If you didn't never watch or read the books, because they set it up that way, then it's like, oh, it's not a surprise that he got assassinated because it's already like everybody. Yeah, everybody was all tense all the time.
That's a fail. That's a fail.
Yeah,
that was a fail.
No, I understand. That's a good point. No, I understand. But I'm just saying the reason it felt like that because of where it started in the movie. But to me, like the light stuff was like when, and like I said, I'm bad with the names, but. Like when Paul, like when you see, you know, like Duncan, Idaho, and just like their little, you know, their rapport and stuff, and how he was just so happy to see him. So stuff like that, I thought was really cool. Or him just being like a kid and just not trying to be bothered, and his mom was always trying to give him a lesson, and you know, she's like, forcing him. He's like, Mom, you know, this is, this is first thing in the morning. I'm tired, you know. So stuff like that. And his moment with his dad, and it was like talking about kind of like, you know, like legacy, and you know, I didn't want this ring either, and I found my way to it, and you might find your way to it too.
That was a good scene. I like that scene. Yeah,
all that stuff was not tense. It was kind of like, man, it made me, it gave me, and then the whole thing about, you know, even if you're nothing else, you were my son. Like stuff like that to me, those were moments. Those were
great moments. But we're not talking about that. We're talking about Jessica and Leto.
Yeah, but we're just talking. No, what we were actually talking about was the tenseness, and I'm just saying these are the moments where they acted normal and human. Is what my point that I was making.
Okay.
Another thing I'd like to add before I forgot about. I was going to bring this up before, but I'll bring it up now so I don't forget. So I think one of the first mistake, in my opinion, that this movie did was the very beginning when Zendaya is narrating and talking about the Harkonnen. That's another mistake, calling them Harkonnen. It's Harkonnen.
Thank you, brother.
But anyway,
thank you.
When they have Zendaya narrate, I thought that was the biggest mistake that the director made. The reason why is because you want Zendaya's character to be a mystery. Because now, when Paul has his premonitions about her, oh, what's the surprise? Gee, you know, yeah, he's gonna meet her. So when he meets her, like, there's nothing, because like that's the whole thing. Think about it this way. If that movie started out with somebody else narrating, you could even had like in the original, the Emperor's daughter, because she in the book, she's actually the historian that writes the story about this.
Yes,
you could have actually, and then people would be like, who is this person? Because you'll never see her until near the end of the story. That would have added intrigue.
But they're so afraid of the Lynch's version and comparing.
But don't have Zendaya talk at all. Until he actually meets her, because it adds the mystery of when he's having this premonitions, and it's very beautiful. You see like the way the lighting is when it shows her, and it's like, man, it's mysterious. And then when he meets her, man, that's like powerful. But then you have her narrating in the beginning, that totally diminishes his vision, because it's like the audience already knows who she is. So I think that was one of the biggest mistakes in that movie is the very beginning, having her narrate. It diminishes her character, in my opinion.
I agree.
That's fair.
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah. So
I definitely agree.
So what do y'all think of the Duncan the Idaho character, which I think is a very interesting name?
Jason Momoa was great as Duncan Idaho. He brought him to life. He did a good job.
I liked him. Yeah, I did like him. And I actually liked the Gurney Halleck character.
Josh Brolin.
Better than, I think, I'm not going to disparage Patrick Stewart, because I think he's a great actor.
Right.
But I will have to admit that the way Josh Brolin did him is actually more, I don't want to say it's accurate, but he brought an intensity for how I thought that the character was, because basically the background on Gurney Halleck was he was a prisoner on Gidi Prime. Like, he was tortured and suffered at their hands. So the way that Brolin does it is exactly the way, like, constantly intense and like constantly telling Paul, don't underestimate the Harkonnen, because they're brutal.
He's right.
He did it perfectly. I love this character in it.
And Duncan Idaho also has a background with the Harkonnen planet. He's from Gideon Prime as well. So these are both two men who fled Gideon Prime and wound up becoming loyal Atreides soldiers. But you don't really learn that for a long time. So I'm not even, but no, you're right, Joselito. Yeah, Josh Brolin did a great job in that. He did. When he talked about, the Harkonnens are animals, the way he looked at Paul in his face when he told him, that was a great scene.
Yeah, and it's kind of interesting because I was wondering if he was exaggerating to keep him on point and whatnot. And but I think that I thought was kind of cool with that training scene was when he was like, "Never have your back to me. You never have your back to the door," And he's like, "Well, I know your footsteps." And so I thought it was I like the payoff for that later on when he was hazed with spice and he walks up to him because he didn't even know where he was, and even in the storm, he's like, I know your footsteps.
I will admit that was a good scene. That that was
was
an
beautiful.
added. That was an added scene. Like that was
Okay.
not in that. I will admit
Yeah.
that was a nice.
It
you
was.
know,
That
it
was
was
so
a nice
cool.
connecting
was.
the dots, connecting
Yeah.
the completing the circle of
Yeah.
that that was good. I
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah,
I thought it was very interesting. I thought
Yeah,
it was really cool.
I missed. So we got the scene where the Duke was more concerned when he was out in the desert and he saw the factory, and he was more concerned about saving the factory workers than the spice. And he said, "Damn the spice."
Loved
That was
it.
that was a great scene. But once again, I feel like Lynch's version of that was better because Leah Kynes had the internal dialogue. He looked at the Duke. He said, "Wow, he's more concerned about the spice, and he's more concerned about the men than the spice." He thinks to himself, "I like this Duke. I think I might like this Duke."
Yeah, that was pivotal.
So that wasn't in the new version. You saw her look at him, and then she said, "Take care of your family."
Your family, right? Which
Yeah,
is a heads up. I figured something was going down. I think because it wasn't because regardless, you could tell that she was. I didn't know why or how, but I knew she couldn't say. So her answers was very short and kind of cryptic. Like he's saying straight up, "You set us up to fail. We gave you the best we had. They're just old." So you can see all the stuff that this back and forth with them where he's trying to say this, that, and she's like acknowledging, but not confirming what the truth might be. So they had a lot of that going on, which I thought was very cool. So when she saw him say that, like, screw the spice, those are the people, and she gave him that look, I understood that she was just thinking like, yeah, this guy, this guy's, that he's looking out for the people. So I took it, I understood it when I
but they
that
underplayed it. I mean, what they wrote was okay, but I mean, from the book and the original movie, it wasn't enough for me because it was too cryptic, because I mean, that whole scene is one of the reasons why Leah Kynes decides to help Paul and Jessica. And I mean, and I know that, but missing that dialogue, it kind of it hurt that scene. It hurt because I wanted people to see that Leah was like, okay, this Duke is cool. Wow.
Yeah.
That Leah was shocked because most people don't, no, save the spice. They've been so brainwashed to save the spice at all costs. He had to force them to evacuate. So
that kind of happened on this one too.
More than what I got. Huh?
Yeah, I thought it was interesting because because it's almost like they was kind of arguing back and forth with each other, saying like, "Hey, get off," basically, and they were kind of like almost like they're gonna go down to ship. I'm thinking like, no, it's somebody. So that also showed that what they were used to dealing with before, where they would have just let them butts die. So I thought it was very interesting that you could see the first like they had to almost actually pull the people out of there. Like they had to risk their life almost more than they should have, because like in most situations, people would have ran to the ship, not even wanting them to jump onto the ship, but they had to go out there and kind of direct them like, come on over.
And that shows you how the Atreides are good people. I mean, that part was great.
And how they were treated before.
Yes.
With the other folks.
Yeah, they're not like what, because obviously the Fremen and Leah just assume that they're just like every other colonizer that comes into this planet. They're just gonna like treat us like chattel, and we're just they're just here for the spice. That's all they are. We're just like, we're a dollar sign to them, basically.
Right.
Or whatever their money, whatever their currency is. I can't remember.
So even though I don't recommend this film, like I said, because I'm divided on it, I didn't hate it, but I didn't love it. I am here for the sequel to it, for part 2. Now, I was told it's supposed to be 3 segments, 1, 2, and 3, kind of like Lord of the Rings. But then someone there like, oh, it's just 1 and 2. What's it supposed to be? Anyone know yet?
I find it hard to believe that they can finish it in the second one, because the first one was so drawn out. And not a lot. If you think about it, not a lot actually happened. I mean, big stuff happens, but in terms of the storyline, like they barely cover in a lot of the storyline. So I find it hard to believe that they'd be able to finish it all.
It's going to be 3 segments. It's going to be 3.
It's got
like Lord of the
Rings.
Rings. And it's going to work. It will work. So we'll see. I
think with this, what's going to happen is I think it's gonna be one of those things, like for me, like with Lord of the Rings. Like I obviously I watched Lord of the Rings. I didn't like Lord of the Rings, but
it's like you're my brother. It's like you're my brother, Jose.
I watched it.
My other brother besides Jason.
Because I knew there was going to be action, but I actually didn't like Lord of the Rings. It's going to be the same for Dune. Bro. People are going to watch it because they're going to be compelled to see the action. But like the ones who are diehard Doonies, like me and Keith, are probably not going to like the rest of the series. But we will obviously watch it because we want to see what happens.
Yes.
And we'll probably enjoy. I know I'll probably enjoy the action, but I think I'm not going to like the way that the characters are going to be. I mean, I don't know, but from the way this was, I think I'm not going to like, but you know, unlike Keith, I think I like I said, I still would recommend this because it's still a good movie in the sense of like, it's compelling, but in terms of the way it harkens back to the original, I don't like the way they did that.
So what did y'all think about the Javier Bardem character? What's his name?
He was great as Stilgar.
Stilgar? Okay.
It was good. Yeah.
I thought that was brilliant when he just went up there and he had nothing to say. He didn't care about the guards and stuff. That just almost showed how much of a badass he was, because he walked up to the Duke like it was no problem. And I thought it was just I loved that he just read him. He just looked him up and down, said that's all I had to say, and just turned his back on him and just walked out. And then he told Paul, "It's like I recognize you," and I thought, wow, that's crazy. So, and then and it's funny because he's played some crazy characters, but to me, he seemed more human in that than I've seen him in any other movie he's done, and that's hard to. And he was an alien on this one, so I thought it was just very funny that on this is when I finally see him, being a character that I can kind of understand coming from him. So I thought that was interesting. What did you guys think of the Baron? Now, I remember the Baron. One thing I do remember from the David Lynch movie was the Baron was crazy looking. So what did you think of this interpretation of?
I actually like this Baron because I think the Lynch. One of the things in the Lynch one, like I think the Baron in the Lynch one was good, but in the sense that he was good, like in a kind of not in a comic way, not comic as in funny, but like he fulfilled the role. The David Lynch Baron, in my opinion, fulfilled the role as a great villain, but this Baron in this version, I think is closer to how I would see him in real, like the one in David Lynch felt like more of a caricature of the Baron, very shallow. Like it's good, but this one, like there's that depth to the Baron in this one, like a mysterious depth and a sinisterness to him because he doesn't say much, but it's more of his actions, which makes him actually, in my opinion, more sinister. And if I don't know. Obviously, you don't know the history, but the Baron was at one time very handsome.
Don't tell.
Very good looking. Okay.
Well, that might not. Does that play into the movie at all? The fact.
Well, no, it doesn't. So you can tell that's
fine.
It doesn't,
yeah,
but it is.
That's true.
But it is connected. It is connected with the Bene Gesserit. I won't say.
No,
I won't say.
You cannot talk about that.
Okay, I won't.
Because
I won't.
Some of that is tied to the movie, or it should be.
That's okay. That's true. That's true. I won't say it. But I will say that I love the Baron, the way they did the Baron in this one. I think it was well done. It was well done.
So I agree with Joselito. So Kenneth McMillan, who played the Baron in David Lynch's version, was brilliant. I mean, for the longest time, I thought that's how the Baron looked in the comic. I mean, in the book, until I realized, no, that's not how he looked. David Lynch exaggerated him, gave him all those ugly boils and stuff. So he was like a character. He was a caricature. But here's the thing, though. He was so evil. He was so villainous. He was so vile. He's so unforgettable. I mean, he's my favorite out of all the Barons. But this new Baron is more like the book. He's more how the Baron would look, and his subtleness is so evil.
Yeah,
I mean,
I will say, yeah.
He's very
okay.
yeah.
So the Baron in David Lynch's movie is kind of like, to me, like the way Suicide Squad. What's her name? Margot Robbie's character.
Harley
What's
Quinn?
her? Okay, Harley Quinn. So I don't like. I told you guys that I don't like Suicide Squad because I don't like the premise of like rooting for Harley Quinn, because Harley Quinn is a psychotic character that kills people. I have no. So for me,
He was a psychiatrist too.
like the David Lynch Baron, I love him because he's like a great bad guy, but he makes him like lovable. This version Baron, I'm actually scared of him. Like, it's like the way he should be, where like I don't empathize with him at all. Like, I'm actually scared. Like, he's actually one of those villains where you're scared if the main character gets stuck in a room with them, type of thing. Like, the David Lynch version, I love that Baron. He's a bad guy, but the way he kind of is the way he flourishes the acting of that character actually makes him likable too. This one, I'm scared of actually this one. This version is just scary because he's sinister. He's more sinister.
And I was tripping out too when he started floating up. I'm like, does he have like a snake body? I was trying to figure out what was going on because I didn't realize he was just floating. Yeah, so I seen him lit up on his back, but I didn't know. When I first seen him rise up, I'm thinking like, what's going on with that?
I will say that they did that I like that version better, because if you remember when he rises up, he has that, like, it look not a cape, but he has that, so it makes him look longer, right? So it totally was a great effect. That was a great effect.
I thought it was pretty cool, and I think his name is Stalin Skarsgård, and it's so funny because he's like, he's the doctor on the Thor movies. So I seen him on other stuff. So to see him in this movie was such a trip. And I'm thinking like, man, he's channeling Marlon Brando in this. Yeah, it's just like it's a trip. So,
or did Marlon Brando channel the Baron? Apocalypse Now, because that's the funny part, because Dune was written in 1965, so but
reading and doing your interpretation of something, that's kind of like, that's kind of different. But it's interesting how Lynch does his stuff, and he does his Lynch stuff just like, I don't know, like 89 Batman, like that's an interpretation. Like the first one was kind of like more like Batman, and the second one, when they asked Tim Burton to come back, that was Batman on Tim Burton. So it was exaggerated. It wasn't the same as our straightforward Batman. So when you have strong directors, sometimes you get that little interpretation. It is cool. Sometimes it adds to the situation.
But Kenneth McMillan, though, his Baron was fun because he enjoyed being evil. He really enjoyed what he was doing. He was getting off on plotting the Atreides' demise.
he did make. I mean, for me, he made him likable.
No,
so
he did.
I mean, it depends on how you want. Like, but this Baron, like,
no, he's not likable. He's creepy.
There's
I'm
nothing
with you on that.
I like.
He's too subtle.
I can't like.
He's too calm. He's too calculating.
Which makes him which will make him a great, actually probably a better Baron in that sense. Yeah.
I agree. So now we should be getting more from Dave Bautista, because Dave Bautista plays his nephew, the Beast Raban, Glasser Raban. So we didn't get a whole lot of him, but that'll get fleshed out in part 2, and you get to see Raban's brother Fade, who was played by Sting in the original movie.
Did they say who did they say who plays Fade?
We don't even know who Fade is.
Okay.
We don't know.
Okay.
So we haven't seen the Emperor. So what this film didn't do, which was surprising, and I don't know if I feel good or bad about it. We didn't see the Emperor. We saw the Emperor's planet, Sardaukar.
He's mentioned a few times too.
Salusta Secundus. That's the Emperor's planet.
Actually, Keith, Salusta Secundus is not his planet. That's the prison planet.
Thank you. Okay.
That's a little background. Yeah, that's the prison planet where all of the prisoners are put, and then they're like under the guise of a prison. They're trained to be like military people.
Sardaukars are trained there. His army. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, my bad. Yeah, you're right. So that's his prison planet. So we saw that, but we didn't get to see the Emperor yet. We haven't seen Fade. So, and usually at this point in that film, we would have saw them. So So there's anticipation. So I don't know what Denis going to do next. I mean, we'll see how all that unfolds in part 2.
Yeah, and that's what kind of puts us in a funny place. One, that you know information about it before, and two, this could be a whole. This doesn't. We don't know if it's going to switch up and have a whole different thing at the end. We don't know, and it's interesting in the first place to even have to discuss, a half or a part of a movie anyway. It's kind of not fair because we don't really know the rest of it, because it could stick the landing and it could just crash and burn. We don't know. But like I said, for me, for the most part, it had a lot of heart and world building for me that I could stick with. But I didn't have the conflict stuff, so it wasn't bumping against anything. But just as a movie, it's a little long-winded, but I don't mind slow burns as long as I'm interested in the characters and you pace it out good enough with other things going on, like with action or little twist or whatever. And so for me, I had those things in there to at least hold me until the next movie. I think it was very dangerous, like I said before, to even split a movie like this, because you don't have the whole big picture and you just getting a portion and it's brand new. That's a rough sell for folks. Because sometimes people, we have too many options. We could go somewhere else. We're going to wait a year for somebody to give me the rest of the story.
And it's not like Dune is not, as much as, it's popular. It's a cult following. It's not Star Wars where people like love it so much that they're willing to wait. You're right. I mean, it's dangerous. Like, I know that whatever the finances maybe might have made it difficult, but what I would have done is I would have already filmed all of the movies and I would have released all of them within the same year. I wouldn't do that. Nobody wants to wait unless it's like,
or the following year, or following Christmas or something.
Yeah, look at the Matrix. I mean, the Matrix can get away with that because they've already established such a cult, like a big, not a cult following, an actual popular following.
And they complete the original story too. They had a complete story, so anything extra would just be icing on the cake. Well, we already had the cake with the first movie.
Exactly. You're right. But this one hasn't done that yet, so
Hey, this is Jay, and I hope you're enjoying the conversation so far. I just want to let you know that this conversation is part of a larger conversation that continues on the next episode. Thanks for listening.